Alright guys, now we're going to take a look at anaerobic cellular respiration. So again, anaerobic respiration is respiration in the absence of oxygen. So no oxygen is present to help with the reactions here. So there's two stages. The first is glycolysis. So if you need to go see glycolysis, go check out the other video that I've created on glycolysis, okay? Then the second stage is fermentation. Now there's two different types of fermentation. One is alcohol fermentation and one is lactic acid fermentation. And we're going to take a quick look at both of these types of fermentation. Okay, so the first one, alcohol fermentation. Alcohol fermentation is obviously producing alcohol or ethanol, and the way we do that is it occurs in a yeast molecule or a yeast organism. Okay, and NADH passes its hydrogen atoms to acetaldehyde. Okay, and acetaldehyde is sort of an intermediate in terms of alcohol formation, and it's generating carbon dioxide, ethanol, and NAD positive. Okay, this is formed when carbon dioxide molecule is removed from a pyruvate to form ethanol. So when we remove this carbon dioxide from the pyruvate, which remember pyruvate's a 3-carbon sugar, it forms ethanol. So ethanol is a 2-carbon chain. Okay, that's where the eth comes from. It's a 2-carbon chain with a hydroxide group on the end, making it an alcohol. All right, so then this is what the net reaction would look like. We have glucose here. We have investment of 2-ADP and a phosphate group. This is in the glycolysis, remember, okay? And then we have a net reaction product that gives us 2 ethanols, which is this product here, as well as 2 carbon dioxides and 2 ATP produced. All right, if we were to look at this type of alcohol fermentation or this type of anaerobic respiration, what you'll see is you have this glucose here, and this is the process of glycolysis, okay? So we get it broken down into 2 3-carbon or 2 pyruvate molecules. Okay, then from these pyruvate molecules, they get transported, okay? And in the process of alcohol fermentation, we have an input of some water. Okay, and with its input of water, we have carbon dioxide removed. Okay, we used water to break apart this pyruvate molecule, and we have carbon dioxide produced. Okay, then we have 2-acetaldehyde, which is this intermediate product created, and all you have to know that is that it's a 2-carbon compound. Okay, so we removed 1 carbon in terms of from the pyruvate molecule here in terms of carbon dioxide, and it says 2 here simply because we have 2 pyruvate molecules entering this part of the cycle. All right, and then we have electron and hydrogen from NADH coming in, all right, and reducing this compound into 2 ethanol molecules. So we have from each acetaldehyde we have an ethanol produced, and this is what creates our alcohol. All right, so some simple applications of alcohol fermentation. Bread. So bread is alcohol fermentation. We ferment flour. So we ferment that wheat flour into a delicious bread. Okay, we have soy sauce. We're fermenting the soybean. Vinegar is also from a fruit or a grain. So you might hear of something like rice vinegar, okay, or apple cider vinegar. These are all alcohol fermentations from a fruit. Right, chocolate, this is my favorite one from alcohol fermentation. The cocoa bean is fermented in order to produce the chocolate. Sauerkraut, some of you could have some sauerkraut on, I don't know, I'm Ukrainian, so I have sauerkraut with Ukrainian dinners. All right, so you might have tasted sauerkraut, as well as wine and beer from grapes and barley. So we ferment the grapes, we ferment the barley, and we produce these products. Okay, the second type of anaerobic respiration I want to take a look at here is lactic acid fermentation. So again, this is the process of glycolysis, nothing new here. We create our pyruvate molecules, but what happens is that here we have just a simple cycle. We have electrons from NADH, okay, and we actually don't remove any carbon dioxide in this case. We just have lactic acid here. So I mentioned earlier in the week that lactic acid was a product that that occurs in our bodies naturally if we have strenuous exercise. So if we work out to the point where our oxygen delivery system isn't 100% efficient, we have this lactic acid produced, which causes a lot of soreness in our muscles. So here's what I was talking about here with in terms of lactic acid fermentation and exercise. So during strenuous exercise, our muscle cells require more ATP than can be supplied. So our body is desperately trying to keep up with us producing energy to fuel the muscles for moving. Okay, so we also need oxygen in this case because oxygen is what allows us to produce a high level of ATP in aerobic respiration. So under these conditions, ATP is supplied through lactic acid fermentation. So our body is using up all of the ATP produced that we produce in in aerobic respiration. We produce a ton of ATP, all right, and in the conditions of low oxygen levels, we produce ATP through lactic acid fermentation just to supply those muscles with a little bit more energy. Okay, this process occurs when NADH from glycolysis transfers its hydrogens to pyruvate in the cytoplasm and regenerating NAD positive, allowing glycolysis to continue. So we saw that on the previous slide that NADH donates its hydrogen atoms and electrons into creating lactic acid. Here is what lactic acid would look like. Notice that it is a 3-carbon sugar here, and again it provides an additional 2 ATP to our muscle cells. All right, this is what lactic acid would look like in a chemical structure there. And the accumulation of lactic acid into muscle tissues causes stiffness, soreness, and fatigue. So whenever your muscles feel tired, you will notice that they start to get a bit sore, and this is simply because the lactic acid is building up. So lactic acid is transported through the bloodstream from the muscles to the liver. So when this is built up in the body, we can sort of gradually expel it from the buildup within our muscles to the liver, where it's processed, broken down, and as you know through your excretory system and digestive system, the liver is a detoxification organ, so it breaks this compound down into something that we can actually expel from the body. So when intense exercise stops, lactic acid is converted back to pyruvate, so it kind of goes in a reverse reaction. So panting after strenuous exercise is a way of paying the body back from the oxygen debt. So if you breathe heavily, you increase the amount of oxygen flow into the lungs, and this helps process the lactic acid. So we can convert this lactic acid back to pyruvate, but we need this oxygen there in order to convert it back to a pyruvate molecule. Okay, once it's converted back to pyruvate, it likely will go into the aerobic cycle, so just keep that in mind. So energy storage is a main focus of exercise physiology. Some of you might be interested in exercise physiology, or if any of you are active, it's definitely something to kind of consider as you're working out. It helps with how you are breathing and types of stretching and things that can help reduce the lactic acid buildup and can help you build your aerobic fitness, right? So aerobic fitness is a measure of the ability of the heart, lungs, and bloodstream. So it's basically your oxygen delivery system to your muscles. So your maximum oxygen consumption, or VO2 max, is the maximum volume of oxygen that cells can remove from the bloodstream at optimal exertion. So this is basically how efficient your body is at taking oxygen from your blood and using it in your muscle cells in order to produce this ATP. All right, VO2 can be increased with training and decreases with age and heredity. Okay, so, well, and heredity is a factor, sorry. So VO2 can be increased if you are an intense trainer, if you work out, if you do a lot of aerobic fitness. So this would be like cardio fitness. If you do that, your VO2 max can be increased, and you will have a greater efficiency at removing oxygen from your bloodstream and sending it to your muscles. Okay, so this would be what people consider in shape. Okay. Lactic acid fermentation occurs continuously while exercising, again just providing that extra energy that we need. All right, there's a lactic acid threshold, is sort of where the value of exercise intensity, where lactic acid production increases. So there's a certain amount, this would be mediocre level of intensity of your exercise. Once you reach a certain threshold, this you'll notice will spike here. So the lactic acid concentration will dramatically increase, and this is simply just because your muscles need that extra energy. So average people, it's at about 60% of their VO2 max. Okay, and trained people, it shows up at about 80% of their VO2 max. So trained people will get less sore because they have a greater ability to remove oxygen from the bloodstream in order to produce aerobic cellular respiration. Okay, average people, you'll see that it's about 60% of their maximum VO2. Then they need additional lactic acid fermentation to provide that extra energy to the body. Okay, so supplements and toxins, this is kind of an interesting application. Some people that are bodybuilders and whatever will use creatine phosphate, and some of you may have heard this. Essentially what it does is it donates adenosine diphosphate to the body, which allows your body to bind additional phosphate groups to that ADP, and it maintains high levels of ATP generation. So essentially what this is doing is it's reducing your need for oxygen and reducing your need for aerobic respiration, and it's just providing the ATP for the muscles to sort of allow continuous levels of ATP being supplied to the muscles for continuous muscle contraction. So this offsets some of the symptoms of lactic acid buildup, and again, this is often, you'll see it's some bodybuilders will use this, and it's not generally a very widely accepted thing to do. You'll see that some toxins, and it's also carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide is an interesting toxin. This is produced often in cars and things like that. And what happens is it has a higher affinity, or it has a greater ability to bind to hemoglobin than oxygen. So it'll actually take the replace of oxygen in your blood, and it will bind to it a lot easier, and then it blocks the oxygen from binding, and then you don't have delivery to your muscles, and then you're producing no aerobic respiration. And this is a big problem in terms of your body functioning. If we have no oxygen to produce energy and to have aerobic cellular respiration, essentially it shuts down all of your cells. All right, I think that's all I have for anaerobic respiration. Take a review. Please email me with any questions if you have them, and good luck.